ask you to accept that on your computer. And then I think we might have some other folks join us, but I think we're good to go and whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, well guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight for another round of cocktails with Cardinals. I think I know pretty much everyone on the call, but for those of you that I have not met personally, I'm Josh Hawkins, our Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations. I'm very excited and pleased to be joined tonight by our new Vice President for University Advancement, Dr. Jasmine Farrier. So she's going to spend a little bit of time with you guys tonight talking about her vision for the University of Louisville, for University Advancement and Alumni Relations, and of course take some open Q&A at the end from you all to have some open dialogue. So we have collected some questions from you guys ahead of time that we're going to build into our talk tonight. But please feel free to use the chat bar. Mary Ann's here with us, Matt's here with us to collect those. And then obviously at the end, we'll try to have some open dialogue with Jasmine and each of you all. So, and when Neely introduced Jasmine last month, which I don't know, well, I do know Jasmine feels this way because I've had plenty of conversations with her about it, but it feels a lot longer than 1 month. But when she introduced her to the team, our advancement team last month, she said that she sought someone who would be authentic in telling the UofL story. And I can tell you from our limited time in working with Jasmine in this role, she definitely has a strong ability to share the vision of the university and also be able to tell the story of the university. And that's due to her strong connection to the university that she's had for close to 20 years. So before I turn it over to Jasmine, I'm going to embarrass her a little bit with some background bio information. So Jasmine is a well-known and respected political science scholar. She began serving as Vice President for University Advancement officially on August 1st. She's a native of Brooklyn, New York, and joined the UofL Political Science faculty in 2002 and has served as chair of the department since 2018. Her current courses and research span all 3 branches of the U.S. government. Cornell University Press published her 3rd book, Constitutional Dysfunction on Trial, Congressional Lawsuits and the Separation of Powers, in December of 2019. She's an expert on the U.S. presidency, and of course, during this presidential election year, she's going to continue to teach a course on that topic. A prolific writer, speaker, and public servant, Farrier has written, edited, and reviewed dozens of books and articles and has served as an expert commentator on local, state, and national media nearly 200 times. She has served on numerous College of Arts and Sciences and university-wide committees and work groups, serving as co-chair of the Committee on Learning and the Implementation Committee of UofL's recent strategic plan. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and her PhD in Government from the University of Texas at Austin. So Jasmine, thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight and talk to this core group. As you know, this group spans from our chapter volunteers, our council volunteers, special interest groups, and alumni board members. So we're really excited for you to spend some time to get to know them and to talk to them a little bit about your vision. So I'm going to turn this over to you first, just to let you have an official welcome and introduction, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, Josh. And thank you to all the friendly and familiar faces, and to those whom I do not know. I know your leaders, and I see some friendly competitors from our last day of giving and some other councils that we may have gone toe-to-toe against for some fundraising. Hats off to you. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. So what's most important to me in seeing these faces is the familiar political science faces without whom I would not be in this seat. So I want to thank Mary Ann. I want to thank Amanda LeDuc. And of course, I see Jacqueline, I see John Weber, Brandon McReynolds, and others who made the Political Science Council so successful. And it was that launch that made me understand from a very authentic place, I think that's what Neely means, how important our alumni connection is for the past, present, and future success of the University of Louisville. As proud alumni leaders, on a Tuesday night, again, I'm just introducing my generic sparkling beverage, that I toast you all that you have given much more than you need to, and much more than perhaps you expected that you would give when you were a student at U of L. I think sometimes it's only later, after you've graduated and launched your careers, that you realize the value of the degree. And this is the theme that I'd like to impart to you tonight. Josh and I have discussed a theme this year for alumni events, and that is celebrating our alumni success. We have to talk about this out loud. We have to talk about this frequently, because the more valuable your degree is, the more valuable the next generation's degree will be. You have to celebrate your own successes, celebrate the successes of your fellow alums, and we have to connect it back not just to development and fundraising, but to recruiting the next generation of Cardinals. And I think this is where my vision might be a little bit different than what you may have expected for a fundraiser. It's very important that we all recognize how competitive the higher education landscape is right now. It's not complicated to say this. You can get a high quality degree in lots of places, but you don't get the U of L alumni network anywhere but U of L. And that's where you all come in. The more we can figure out how to celebrate your successes and the successes of your networks, the better we can tell our new students that we plan to recruit, retain, and launch them, and that this Cardinal family is on their side. So that's one part of what I want to speak with you about tonight, because it's very important that each of you use your creative minds and your networks to go back, pester that department chair and say you want to do more, or that dean. Sometimes you have the creativity that we will need to launch these successful events. I'll hold off more for questions, but that's my introduction. So my marching orders from Neely are very simple. Connect alumni and development, deepen our celebration of diversity at the University of Louisville, and that includes every event that we have, every development opportunity. We need to keep our eyes not just on the new anti-racism narrative, but by building the foundation of success that has been part of U of L's tradition. So I know that this came up in one of the questions, and I want to just be upfront with it. I told Neely that all the new initiatives are welcome and wonderful, but we can't neglect the existing relationships we have with the Porter Scholars, with the MLK Scholars, to recruit and retain African American and other underrepresented faculty and staff, to promote, to have an administration that looks like us. For all of these reasons, we can't just go into the new, we have to maintain our existing traditions, and that is very important to Neely, and it's very important to me as well. I'll stop there. You know, professors only speak in 50, 75-minute and 2.5-hour increments, so I don't want to overstate my hello.
Well, Jasmine, thank you. Appreciate that opening. But as noted, you've been in your role now for, I believe this is your 25th day, so since August 1st. So
yes,
I know through the numerous conversations you and I have had, and you've had with our team, we know that you're putting in a lot of hours to get acclimated and to hit the ground running, and we truly appreciate that. But can you talk a little bit about your first 25 days and some of the positives that you've seen?
Yes.
And also some of the challenges you see moving forward?
Well, the positives are the people, and that's what you know. So in my first 25 days, I started to tally this up, but I don't have it handy. I have had the pleasure of meeting the leadership team from advancement, which includes both the alumni side, the development side, and then the back office side, which is called advancement services. I've also had the pleasure of meeting deans and donors and community supporters, including leading foundations. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Kelly Hodges and Tommy Nolan. So your fearless leader and your fearless former leader of the wonderful Alumni Council overview group. And I enjoyed talking to volunteers. So this is the important part for me to appreciate. Just like our board of trustees, you're volunteers, and you are not required to, of course, contribute. You contribute your time, not necessarily your funds. And of course, we would love to have both. But I also want you to know that in my early 25-day tour, that it's important for me to deepen my appreciation of how much time people give to the University of Louisville, and that I have to acknowledge and celebrate that type of generosity as well. So as Josh said, I've been a professor for 18 years. I've served on all sorts of committees. I thought I knew U of L, but I don't. So it's an extraordinary opportunity for me to broaden my reach, especially into the health sciences campus, which I do not know as well. So I've had the pleasure of taking a tour of the School of Nursing with Dean Hardin. I've had the pleasure of walking around the health sciences campus and getting to understand their needs as well. So this Friday, for example, I'm taking a 2-hour tour of the Conn Center. I parked behind the Speed School for 18 years in my old lot. I walked by every building and Speed. I said hello to the professors. I have never taken a tour of the Conn Center. These are some of the highlights of my early time.
There we go.
That's
I
right.
can attest, she has been extremely busy during her first 25 days. Guys, I will apologize if you hear laughing children in the background. They are sugared up from their first day. So I will try to keep myself muted as we move through the program tonight. But Jasmine, why don't you, everyone knows, your role, I think, that you played on developing and helping to build the Political Science Alumni Council. Obviously, one of our very active alumni groups one of our most active alumni groups that we have that does a wonderful job of engaging with their alumni. So, as you work through this process of transitioning now into our vice presidency role, have you given thought of how to help recruit future volunteers in terms of maybe how you got started working with that council, and what advice do you have for all of the volunteer leaders who are with us tonight that are watching in terms of what they do from a day-to-day, month-to-month engagement aspect?
Well, the most meaningful understanding that I have learned, it's not original to me, but again, the most meaningful understanding of what I've learned thus far in my job about philanthropy applies to the Alumni Council as well. And you have to think of yourself as helping other people live their values. So again, you'd have to repeat this a few times until you understand how meaningful that phrase is. You are going to give people an opportunity to live their values. You're not asking for time, you're not asking for money, you're giving them an opportunity to not only give back to their alma mater, but to shape the next generation of Cardinals. And the Political Science Council is just one of many opportunities that we have to use the creativity and the energy and the diversity of our in the field Cardinals. And the simple question is, how did you and your council use your degree? How did you become you? So Amanda, of course, and I, and Marianne, and Nakia, and Brandon, and John, and Jacqueline was there as well at the beginning. And I want to tell you the nub of the inspiration. I had, when I was chair of political science, it's still there, the new chair inherited it, a wall of fame. And those were business cards that we collected every time we had an alumni event. Not only were those business cards there to remind us of why we do what we do, but whenever I gave a tour for high school students and their parents of the political science department, I always ended the tour back in my office and I said, don't ask me what you will do with your political science degree, ask them. And I'd lead, of course, the parents were the ones I was really trying to connect with. And they would stand transfixed, looking at the extraordinary diversity, the extraordinary success of that Cardinal Hall of Fame, that wall of fame that allowed me to say that this is what Cardinals do for each other. So what did we do? We gathered together our alums, and I'm sure you've done this in all of your own councils, and you ask what would be a celebration of your success. In the case of political science, and again, I welcome Marianne and Nakia and Amanda to correct me, but one of our early projects was to make sure that Cardinals in Louisville had an opportunity to go to DC to accept very prestigious internships that they could not otherwise afford. Brandon, of course, was an extraordinarily generous donor, and we can ask him a little bit more about what inspired him to give. When we're putting money in the pockets of students for a very simple reason, internships should not just be for wealthy people, especially the DC internships that could be a career-making networking opportunity. So we gathered alums, we had a good time raising the money, and it was money that went right into the students' pockets. Then, not only did we give away the scholarships, but we invited a diverse array of alums to help us sort through the applications. And of course, we had a very good time doing it. And these alums got to get together. Now, for political scientists, what's more inspiring than seeing Democrats and Republicans have fun for a good cause? And I mean it most sincerely. It was very inspiring to watch what really brings people together. And it was not only successful financially, but the stories that came out of our first year of those internships actually fueled an entire impact report that alumni and development still use, featuring the stories of those students. Amanda even organized a takeover day on Instagram so our DC students could show us life from their perspective. So what does this all mean? These are 3 lives that are changed forever. And the university had stories that could be inspiring and that could be replicated through all of your own unique councils. So that's an example of where I think we got a lot of bang for the buck and everybody felt so good.
Well, Jasmine, our young alumni segment specifically, which is growing dramatically year by year, is an area that we're really looking to increase our engagement and giving. What are some of your thoughts in terms of how you plan to engage our young alumni, specifically in giving? And are there any, micro fundraising ideas that you may have that may really draw the young alumni segment together to support the university?
Well, first I'd like to say that I like the fact that you're all in different, not all of you, but you're in different places. So one of the most important recruitment tools that we have to grow our enrollment is to recruit outside of Louisville and outside of Kentucky. So many of you may know that we have a new budget model at UofL, and that new budget model depends upon growing enrollment. Enrollment is going to become the lifeblood of the university. When you think about connecting with potential Cardinals in your area, and frankly, it could be in Louisville, it could be the 119 other counties in Kentucky, it could be in Cincinnati, DC, Richmond, Colorado. We do recruit athletes from all over the United States, and we're recruiting more students to come to UofL. How could you help those recruiters? How could you help when their development officers visiting and other people to get together? Even a picture of our Colorado group somehow coming together, or our Richmond group, just sharing a meal, toasting the Cardinals, having your clothes on, that gives us a sense that you're out there. I hope you don't feel neglected. And I'd throw the question back at everybody here. What are your ideas about engaging young alums? So can we get some mics on and hear from other people? Let's start with Brandon.
This is my question, so I'm just here to go ahead. The important part was really engaging young alumni around philanthropy and the idea that often I think young alumni, especially if they could give just like $5 or $10 at a time. I understand we have these like reoccurring type abilities to do that. But if it was project-based or some type of fund-based, I feel that there's an opportunity to get those kind of cumulative dollars that really add up, especially from new grads. And so just wanted to hear your thoughts around that.
That's a great point, Brandon. So sometimes it's not giving a lot, but it's the giving part. So if I can borrow a strange metaphor from political science, just bear with me. $10 here and $10 there, if you're running for a campaign, may not seem like a lot, but that person is now invested in you. So one of the oddities of American politics is that people who are self-funded completely and don't ask for money from anybody think that they are helping their cause, but they're not. And then one of the reasons why the wealthiest candidates don't automatically win, now money helps, don't get me wrong, it's because there's not buy-in from the voters, and the bodies win elections, not just the dollars. So what Brandon, I think what you're saying is, could we get a buy-in that would actually create more of an emotional connection than a big financial pot? And I'll give you an example. So one of the deans that I've met recently is Dean Craig Blakely, who's the Dean of the School of Public Health. Public health is one of the newest schools on campus. And the entire alumni base of public health is about 1,200 students across all degree levels, 1,200 students. What if each of those students gave $100? Is that something that's possible? $10? Can you get a small group of people to commit to giving 100% of the group in a small way? And this is what I liked about what Brandon said. It's not an arbitrary dollar amount that you're after. Like if there were a big thermometer behind me, I'm sure I'll get one eventually, where I get to say, we raised this much money. The key word that Brandon said was project. It's not an arbitrary number. It's a project outcome. And I think that's where younger philanthropists and younger alumni leaders could argue, like the Political Science Council did, that we see what the money does with our own eyes, in our own time, because we're not patient, and we shouldn't be patient. We want to see the outcomes now. I think that's a great idea, Brandon.
Well, Jasmine, I think I've mentioned this number to you before, but about 60% of our alumni base lives in the Louisville metro area, which is outstanding and challenging at the same time. But it is a strong positive that I don't think the universities have. With that said, as we see numerous people on the call tonight who do not live in this area, what ideas or steps do you feel needs to be taken to expand our outreach beyond basically the Louisville bubble? Even though we have a large majority of our constituents and supporters and alumni here in this area, we also have a lot of alumni and strong supporters who live outside of that bubble. So do you have any ideas or future steps that will be taken?
Well, it's going to have to be somewhat entrepreneurial. So for example, when I met Tommy Nolan last week for coffee, we had a really good time talking about his experience living in New York. And I think that's what reconnected him to the alumni leadership role. So it was very interesting to me to hear how he brought his gang together, how they found the right bar, how they found the right games to start to organize around. And that's a wonderful sense of community. But here I'll give you the challenge, and maybe John Weber, you have some ideas about this as well. What about the 119 counties of Kentucky, not Jefferson? Do we have people who can help recruit? I think we all know the answer to this. Is the University of Louisville getting its fair shake for prospective students and their parents across the entire Commonwealth? You've known this longer than I have. What's the secret sauce, and how do we get it? How do we have a more important impact on the entire Commonwealth? What are your ideas there? So Josh, I'll throw the question back at the group. How do we engage our alums in rural Kentucky, in Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Northern Kentucky? What do we do?
Yeah, feel free to jump in. You can unmute yourself, or if you'd like to provide comments in the chat side as well, but feel free to jump in.
Please.
Hey, Jasmine, this is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
As you know, I actually grew up in one of the other 119 counties. And I can tell you it's certainly not probably a fair shake in terms of the red and blue divide is there, and there's other schools that are pulling from those 119. But I know we've talked about before, and Josh, I know we had a lot of conversations about sort of a road show and some of the things that probably some things come with cost, some things don't, where maybe we could take alumni, not just folks who work at the university, but take alumni out to some of those counties and speak to, whether it's at a school level or whatever event in a county, and there's several of those, right? But I think I always say spread the red, and I'm no social media expert or wizard, but even I can send things out that say spread the red when I see something that's of note that the university does. And as I told Jasmine when we met, we in this group know our story. I don't think we do a very good job of pounding our chests and saying everybody else should hear our story. So we're good at telling each other our story, and we feel really good about it. But I think we could take that to 119 counties in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And for the folks who are outside of the state, and I know we've talked about the ACC footprint, and taking advantage of that and being out. And we've done that. But like for Brandon, who's in Colorado, that's not in the ACC footprint, or other people who are outside of the ACC footprint, I think we got to figure that out, right? How do we spread the red from a regional state school to a national recruiting powerhouse, right? And I think that's something we have to solve for, but I think we can start it in our own state. If you can't win your own state, or at least get the fair shake, as Jasmine said, then I'm not sure we're ready to take it nationally. So I think we have to start around us first.
Yes, Kelly. Amanda?
I just wanted to jump in. I think one thing that we could probably do more of is singing the praises of the current students, all of our accomplished students who are from those rural counties or other, they don't have to be rural, but from those other 119 counties. I know, again, from the political science experience, we have tried to get a geographic diversity if possible. And when we do have it, it's really important for us to talk about it. So one of our winners of the scholarship that Jasmine talked about was from Jasmine County, I think.
I think.
And I tagged her high school like in some of the posts that we made about her, and they are so proud of her. These schools these hometowns are proud of their students, especially the real small places that just often know those star students. They're and they want to talk about all the accomplishments that they're doing at U of L. And I think we can connect that way, because that can both bring maybe others alums out of the woodwork, encourage future students to consider U of L, and just generally be a good PR mechanism for us.
Yeah, I'll add a couple thoughts as well. One, I think continue the momentum that we have for programs and people who are doing good work already. Ernest Brooks comes to mind. I know several of you all know him and his wife, Elizabeth. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job creating a pipeline, single-handedly creating a pipeline from his county to U of L. And he's done it by building relationships, by getting students on campus, by having that communication be a two-way street. DataSeam is another great organization that uses U of L. Well, U of L uses DataSeam computers throughout the state for cancer research and other things, but they're putting those computers in primarily at this point coal-producing counties' classrooms, and are able to offer scholarships and things like that. And so again, it's a two-way street where U of L is top of mind. I think,
and the founder of DataSeam is Brian Gupton, who's a U of L grad. Is that why you brought that up?
Right, a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Right. So we know him. So this, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, John, but this is what Amanda trained me to do. Whenever I read anything, I'm always looking for the alumni connection. So when you read a story in the news, look for that U of L degree. Google that person immediately. For example, the Courier-Journal is having civil rights leaders and a story that is going on about living civil rights leaders. So whenever I look, I see people we know. The Houstons, Sadiqa Reynolds, Celeste Lanier. I mean, it's constant that when we look, we find, but we have to open our eyes and always look for that information. Sorry, John. I know you, so I can interrupt you, but go back to you.
Oh, absolutely. No, I don't want to ramble, but
no, it's all right.
When I was a McConnell scholar, we would go on a retreat once a year in a different region of the state. Mm-hmm. And I think, that was a really cool experience for me to be able to see other parts of the state. But if we can have our students actually go out and engage with communities and with people, I think that would be helpful. Being recruited as a high school student, I just cleaned out during the pandemic the last vestiges of my items at my parents' house, and I found some college recruitment mailings and stuff. It's a cool feeling to be recruited, and so I think especially if UK is not going to give some people the time of day, it's just I don't know that that's true or not. It kind of was with me, but making people feel special, I think, is important. And along those lines, I know when I was really one thing that kind of brought me back into the alumni fold. I was very, very engaged while an undergrad and a grad student, and very passionate, but I didn't know how to plug back in. And I got an invitation to Dawn at the Downs, and I thought, wow, I'm not a VIP. I'm a nobody who cannot give you any money. But yeah, I'm going to go to Dawn at the Downs, and I think that those types of experiences help bring young alumni into the fold, because we realize that we're valued, we're important, we're building a long-term relationship here, and U of L wants to continue to invest in me, and I appreciate that. So I will stop rambling, but those are a couple thoughts that I had over your last two questions.
Those are great thoughts, but Kelly, can I throw it back to you for a second? You're a busy guy with a very important career. Why
That's
did
overstated, probably.
Right, but why did you want to give back and become a leader? Was it an incident that inspired you? We talked about this, but I want you to share this with the whole group.
Yeah, no, I will tell you, I felt like, and I still feel like, I had to convince everyone in Frankfurt why I was going to Louisville. And I can tell you right now, when I chose Louisville, it was considered almost like being a traitor. You know, like you're what? Why would you go to Louisville? So I kind of felt like I've had to defend that decision forever now. You know, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but innately I find myself traveling. I find myself on way back when we used to travel and go on work trips and things. I would be in an airplane conversation, and it would be almost defending what the great things are about this university that maybe most people outside of a certain area may not know. So that definitely, it still to this day motivates me about Louisville.
Well,
Thank you. Sure.
I wanted to jump in too, if I could.
Oh, sure.
I think with my experience, going back to what John said about being recruited, you know, I was an average student in high school, but I excelled when I went to college. And I don't think colleges do a good enough job of going after that kid that's on the fringe, that needs just a different environment and a different push than another kid, you know, and I don't think colleges as a whole are doing a very good job of grabbing that kid. And, you know, fortunately I landed at Louisville, you know, like I said, I excelled, but you know, I know a lot of kids who were being recruited, who were the Porter scholars, who were the MLK scholars, who ended up failing out. I've seen that happen. And, you know, they just didn't have the work ethic to go that extra mile to go from a high school setting to a college. So how do we identify that student and bring them into the fold where Louisville can actually be the catalyst for them to excel?
That's a great point. And I would say to you, I throw right back, did you have a mentoring team that helped you through? So let's think about what the bookends we've already discussed. We've talked about recruitment to make sure that we have a deep and far and diverse reach for new students. Then we talked about helping to launch with internships and special scholarship opportunities. But one of the missing ingredients is recruitment and then retention. Part of retention is helping students build their resume as they earn their degree. The other part of that is mentoring. And who better than our alumni base to give a student their first internship, their first resume line, because that is really the social capital equalizer. When we talk about inequality and wealth gaps, what we have to think about is how a student leaves college with a family to request money from to go off into a new city or to find a new job, or an alumni family who know the student because they've given that student the first opportunity. Then you build the network that will create those first jobs. And then their gratitude will turn right around and they will give to the next generation. So the mentorship part is something that all alumni councils can consider to meet students where they are. And I think this is what Jerry, what you're saying. Nothing is more irritating to students than being told what they should have known. Do you remember this when you were a kid? You'd go into a new grade, a new class, and they'd say, why don't you know this, 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 and this? And you'd think, I don't know, I'm just a kid. I'm here now, though. And that's what U of L needs to remember as a philosophy of diversity and inclusion, that you meet people where they are. So if I meet a student who doesn't have a resume, then we don't say, well, why does your resume look like this? Or it looks like a high school resume. Help them. So one of the things that the Political Science Council did, I think, Amanda, you can correct me, we did 3 of these, 2 of these, Brandon, Marianne, and a lot of you were there. John, we had what we called career and mentoring blitzes. So we had an opportunity, we did it during COVID. We did it twice in person and once when we first went online in May. What we did was we recruited a diverse group of alums, diversity meaning everything, including where you are in your field, where you are in your country. And of course, we wanted underrepresented groups as well as women. We wanted an absolute beautiful picture of what a degree from Louisville gets you. And here's the best part. They wanted to come. So why? Why would somebody spend a weekend day coming back to the university twice or online to tell the next generation in breakout groups how they became themselves? And more importantly, show us your resume, and they marked it up. They even had whiteboard demonstrations of what resumes should look like. And the people who were there, what was that day like for you to watch this magic happen? So Marianne can talk about that a little bit too.
I'd be happy to. It was one of the first events that I did when I came back as a staff member in the alumni office, and it was amazing. It was one of those days where I was like, I'm in the right spot. This is where I need to be. And so much fun to feel like you were giving back to that next generation. Like for me, a little bit, it felt like I'd finally gotten to that point in my career where I could give back. But to everyone's point here, that you don't have to be at that certain point in your career. You can be 2 years out and you can still have some advice to give to that next generation. And there are so many ways to give back. It doesn't always have to be, you know, with your money. It can be with your time and talents. And I think that's what that day is all about. And that's when you get that engaged alum that then has that buy-in to a project. And that's one of the things I think that made the political science fundraising so successful, is that it was a specific scholarship project. It wasn't, you know, just a scholarship. It was a specific scholarship project, and you had some great people to bring back out and to highlight at again events like that or at the next year's events, and let the people, you know, that gave see what, you know, what really happened with their money and how it made an impact. Yeah, there's both of those days, both the virtual and the in-person one were a lot of fun.
But it's not easy. Believe it or not, this is going to sound strange. I think in all 3 events, we almost had more alums than we did students participate. And so that's a little embarrassing, because when you have a lot of alums coming back to give, you want to have a healthy student population. But U of L students are stretched very thin, and you really have to come after them and invite them. So Deshara, will you tell us a little bit about your council and how you draw alums back in, but also draw students back to you? Does that make sense as a question? What's the magic there?
Sure. So that is actually one of the challenges that I'm finding. So I've recently become an officer within the Kent School Alumni Council. And again, every council functions differently. So in terms of recruiting members in and really getting them engaged has been something that has provided a challenge. But I think one of the ways of engagement, honestly, is through continuing education opportunities. So through the Kent School, there are a lot of professionals that are really needing those CEUs to maintain their licensures. And so that's been one of the ways of really like keeping them engaged and motivated. But outside of that, that has been really the challenge. So, you know, when you get into a profession really deep, a lot of times like that socialization isn't something that's carved within your professional identity. And so that's one of the things, at least I'm really hoping gets involved with the council. But on the flip side, I'm a part of the African American Alumni Council, and we've kind of had an ebb and flow, at least since my involvement, and I believe I became involved about 2014, where at the very beginning we had a big intergenerational council where we had a lot of alumni that maybe not necessarily physically was present at events, but they gave in meaningful ways, again, through our scholarship. They supported by, inviting their fellow alumni and classmates back. But I think, again, as I've seen the shift of even change and engagement, even in that council, where now it is a bit more challenging to get people involved. And I think it was even pre-COVID, honestly. So I think, again, because I have a professional council or more centered council in terms of identity within your career. And then I also have a council that maybe can be more social, even just connectedness in terms of how you identify yourself. So I think that that's kind of the ebb and flow too, when you have councils that are more geared toward a particular career path versus one that maybe has more maybe civic engagement or more, alignment with how you identify.
I think that's very interesting. And maybe Nakia can also talk to us about how this builds up. I think maybe to even wrap up, when you work with different alumni councils, Nakia, you have to tailor your suggestions to their needs and to their culture. So I remember this vividly, and Amanda's going to laugh, but the first time you met us, you said, "Are you guys interested in golf scrambles?" And we're like, "Nope." So then, like, okay, just not everybody's into that. And I know that is, that's difficult for you to be nimble and to say, well, every one of you wants something else, and you have to take a while to draw them out. So Nakia, what did you learn from those experiences?
I think what you just said is so true. And so I do work with a lot of different groups, and all groups have, all groups are different. And so while I may have some groups to say, we do a golf scramble every year and we raise a lot of funds to go towards our scholarships or our respective departments, I have some groups that say, golf scramble, no, we do not want anything to do with the golf scramble. And so while I can share with councils some successful programming or successful initiatives that other councils have done, I really do try to encourage councils to think about their targeted audience, think about their goals, think about what they want to accomplish maybe that year, and how I can assist in accomplishing that, but also to know that every council looks different. And so while I know political science Alumni Council does amazing trivia nights, our AAAC or African American Alumni Council may say, well, we'd rather do some sort of social that's more alumni student networking, because that works better for what we're looking to do. And so I think I try to tell the councils, don't put too much pressure on themselves in trying to fit into a certain mold, because every council is different and everyone's goals are different. And so really looking at the audience that they are trying to connect with and fitting their goals and needs along with that audience. I think one thing that a lot of the councils have taken advantage of is really surveying their alumni to see what do they want to see. I literally just got an email from our College of Business Alumni Council just asking, can we send out a survey so we can see what our alumni want to see from us? How can we assist them? And so I think taking that type of initiative is also very helpful as well. So you can know what are our alumni wanting to see from our council.
I think that's great. And sometimes when we get together physically, maybe we'll be more honest with each other, because one of my most vivid memories, and I told Kelly, I think I told you this story when we met. One of my most vivid memories of our political science first meeting ever, when we invited back about 30 alums, we had breakfast. We decided to do an old and new donut themes. We did Nords, but we also did North Lime, just to make sure that everybody felt comfortable. And then we went around the room, and Nakia, you were there. I don't know if you're going to remember this part, but we asked all the alums there. They're coming back to Ford Hall, so that was very powerful for a lot of them. It's one of those smaller brick buildings on campus near the library, if you're not familiar with it. And it feels like a house. It is a house. The entire department is there under one roof. And for students, it was a powerful feeling just to walk in. So we gather around, we ask everybody their favorite memory. And I don't think we were prepared for what we heard, because it's not what you can get from a survey.
That is
So
so true. That's
one of the favorite memories that we went around the room was that people loved it when retired Professor Phil Lemley, who also was one of the Grand Marshals and the ritualist for graduation, once a year they would gather broken computer equipment, including fax machines at the time, printers, monitors, even the actual towers. They'd bring them to the roof and they'd throw them off the roof. There were dumpsters near the library, but I don't think they were trying to get into the dumpsters. Oh, and they had coolers of beer. I mean, can you imagine a professor and students? So Marianne, were you at one of these things? Throwing equipment off the roof.
The older I got in film, I think I took 3 different Phil Lemley classes, and the older I got in the Phil Lemley classes, the more beer there was involved in the outside of the classroom activities. I think there was a final class meeting that had to take place at the Granville Inn, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. But yeah, Dr. Lemley was definitely one of my.
So you have to be careful what you wish for when you're asking these questions, right?
Yeah. Some of those memories can be really strong.
I think her mouth was on the floor, and it was a great icebreaker, actually.
It definitely was. And I think, to your point, while we can utilize surveys, when there is the opportunity to get in person, just asking individuals, what's one thing they remember, so you can hear that story. Because I did not, take any classes within political science. And so just to hear those stories, you can tell how passionate those individuals are about the political science department, and passionate about the classes they took and the faculty members that taught them. So,
but we're not going to do that for our alumni council. I don't think that we're ever going to recreate that moment, but it did give us a clue that we are different from other departments, and that sometimes outsiders don't understand the culture of U of L. And in fact, I've even heard this from leaders at U of L who would say, what is our culture? And I say that we do so much on so little. Other schools couldn't dare to dream about what we accomplish on fumes. And that's our magic. So when you ask alums how they became themselves, you don't have to ask for a pretty story. You're going to get a U of L story. And that's the unique feature that makes our alumni base completely unlike any other. And we're not a generic university that is interchangeable, frankly, with anyone else. And the more we hear those stories, the more we believe in our own story, that this is what we want to contribute back to U of L. And look at the wonderful alums represented right here who work for U of L. So raise your hand if you're an alum who works for U of L. Okay.
Jasmine.
Yes. Hello.
How are you doing? Nice to see you.
I'm great. It's great to see you, even if it's just your name.
I did that for a reason.
Okay.
I would just like to thank Dr. Lemley and offer up the fact Nakia and Josh have been extraordinary, as well as their staff. My alumni relations go way back to Leslie, who was even here before Rodney Williams. So what they have given us in the recent years is unbelievable. And I would just share with you what Dr. Lemley has done for the University of Louisville. And as I was going through, we're giving a lot of our Red Barn history to the archives, to Tom Owen. And in doing so, I was reminded of all the things that Phil Lemley did, including building a podium from a tree that came where the new Ekstrom Library is. And he built one for the president, and he built one for the Red Barn. And he had a retirement party at the Red Barn, and if you weren't a student, it cost you $20 to get in, and all that money, about $12,000, $15,000, went back to buy new computers, which probably haven't gotten thrown off the roof yet. And that he was just an extraordinary person, as well as you are. But I would also offer up the fact that his event was at the Red Barn, and many people have retired and had parties at the Red Barn. I plan on doing the same as soon as the pandemic's gone, which will be a while. But anyway, I offer up the Red Barn because it's a very popular facility, and it's Red Barn alumni's home, and is also a good place for co-promotions and fundraisers as well, and it's a good environment. And the Red Barn itself has raised a ton of money, and that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Howe. It's wonderful. Thank you, and I'm so happy to get to see you this way. I think Ms. Hampton was trying to jump in a little bit earlier.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say something about, you know, I moved back here in April of last year, and I'm lucky to be participating in 2 UofL alumni groups. One is the Executive Women's, and one is the Business Council. And when I look at what I've seen, and then if is it DJ, is she still on? Anyway, when I was involved in the council in DC, we went to games, and it was fun. You got to know people and that kind of stuff. But I see this council as actually doing things to connect people, doing things that, for example, on the women's group, the executive women's group, people come in and say, my son is moving here from Chicago. I need to find him a job. And people get to work and find him a job, you know. And so having an avenue of an alumni group that we're connected through the university, and that's our connection. You know, maybe in the old days it was your church, but now it's the alumni group. And I've been really impressed with it. I've been impressed with what Neely's done to know the value of promoting these groups. Yeah, that's all.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So who else hasn't had a chance? Who wants to jump in here? Wilson, Barbara, Kayla, Jacqueline, Fran? Yes.
It's Wilson here.
Hi, Wilson.
I said in the chat, and I do think that we have a wonderful network, even though it's small. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, that is probably not in, I call it full force here. So, but if we can just find a group of willing individuals to participate, that network will grow. Mm-hmm. I found that many of other universities have, on top of regional recruiters, which we are investing in that area from an admission standpoint, but many of those universities have alumni in strategic markets to interview students. Now, a lot of these are Ivy League class university, but why couldn't we think of ourselves as a great institution that we want to bring that experience to these prospective students? So to me, for us to able to have that consistent message and probably some sort of, I don't know, I know there is some training, but we probably need something a little more consistent and formal so that we can produce a message that everyone can give, and it will be the same across the United States. I think that's something that we need. That will take time, but something that's a little more formal that we can put together.
Right.
Hey, Jasmine.
Sure.
Thanks, Wilson. Appreciate that feedback as always.
That's great feedback.
We had a question that popped up from Paul Bennett in Arizona, and I thought,
sure,
you may not know this answer. I know I don't know this answer, but it's obviously something we could find out and get back to him. But with your time as a faculty member, do you know of how many different programs here at the university that have an official internship program?
That's a really good question. So the Strategic Planning Committee was trying to gather that data as recently as this summer. And there are 2 types of internship programs. There are the ones that are built in, so like Wilson can talk about that, or I think that Deshara can talk about that. So there are professional schools that have built-in co-ops or practicums or field placements in education, for example, that are required. So that's an example of what we would call experiential learning. An internship is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes those are just getting credit for the thing that the student found him or herself. Others, it's like the Frankfurt program, where it's an annual program. It goes with the legislative calendar, and it's a cohort. So the good question is, where do we find more information on that? And unfortunately, the university does not have a one-stop shop. So I'm curious, why did you ask that question? And maybe we'll figure out a way to get around the unfortunate reality that the university doesn't tell its own story very well sometimes. And so if we had one website where we said, look at all these amazing experiential opportunities, that would also help with recruitment quite a bit.
Absolutely.
But I'm just curious, Paul, what was the nature of the question?
Well, yeah, I went to speed school.
Yeah.
And out in Arizona, where we have a lot more semiconductor companies, Motorola, Intel, Microchip, and of course, up in California. But none of those companies offered any internships to the University of Louisville. So I ended up going down to Florida. I had an opportunity to work for IBM at Lexington to build electric typewriters. But I decided to go with Motorola, and I was pretty happy I did, because that led me into the career I could really choose, which was semiconductors. And I eventually got out to Arizona. And I know there's a lot of medical alumnus out here in Arizona, and a lot of teachers and business as well. So it's just interesting. I don't know how we all got out here, but we have about 700 alumnus out in the Arizona state. So,
well, maybe I'll come visit you as soon as we get to fly again. I think that
you might want to wait till the middle of the winter.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I think but the spirit of your question is really interesting. So I bet if you all went on your home majors webpage and you look at the About Us, which is normally where faculty and staff are listed, you will find somebody called the internship coordinator or the internship director for this. So for Speed, she's a legend, Mary Andrade, who is the internship and co-op connector for Speed. So every school and college will have somebody who's in that position. And maybe it's the day that you make an email request to say, hey, I'm out here. We probably need to be in the posting internship opportunity business a lot more than we are. When alums reach out, the university needs to reach back. Just as I said earlier, when alums reach out, students have to reach back. So in this group, I can't promise that you're going to get instant gratitude, for example, on any of these ideas, but you have to be persistent. Everybody at UofL is a little stretched thin, as we know, and especially those of you who work at UofL, you know that. However, there must be a way to connect with the chair of the department staff coordinator, or the internship director, and say, we're here, we want to do something. And I think that when you have staff experts like Amanda LeDuc, staff experts who are willing to do social media training for other staff members, who are willing to do alumni council basics training for other chairs and other coordinators. To be honest, sometimes people don't reach back. And that's because, again, they're doing the jobs of 5 people, like she does the job of 5 people. And that's, again, the UofL way. But when your council is persistent, just let people know you're out there. And sometimes at UofL, the department chairs are, again, not always interested in learning new social media tricks. If I didn't have Amanda, I would never have learned social media to use it the way she does. And I'm just being honest. Do you think that the people at UofL know how to use your expertise? How do you tag UofL? And maybe some of you would have expertise on that. Our young people, our students, our recent graduates, we can even include recent alums in a train how to tag group to figure out how to get the good word out, because this is what I do believe as we wrap up. You know this and we know this. UofL has so much good news to tell. In fact, we have so much good news, we can't get it out fast enough. And we want to tell those stories because, again, celebrating the value of a degree is celebrating you, and it's celebrating the university, the city, the Commonwealth, the economic engine, and the innovative hub that we are and that we will expand. You're much more powerful than you may realize, all of you, and a very special group.
Well, Jasmine, thank you. Thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
We want to be respectful of your time and
Sure.
everyone else's time. I feel we could go another hour, which is a good thing. So we obviously need to do some more of these open dialogue and open conversations, one to share ideas, but to hear back from each of our strong leaders within their communities and strong volunteers that do so much for us. So Jasmine, thank you again for being here. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to provide?
Well, I just want to thank you, Josh. Josh has been in his position for 10 years, and he nodded politely when I met him the first time. And I said, I have all these great ideas, Josh. And thank you for listening to me, and Mary Ann. I appreciate that you're so open, because it's really important that we explore new ways to celebrate our successes. And that's sometimes the most frustrating thing about being in the Cardinal family. We have to have 10 good news stories for everyone that's challenging. And we know we have it. And I feel very privileged to be able to learn more, to deepen my literacy on our miracles. It's every day.
Well,
so thank you all.
Again.
I really look forward to working with you and getting to know you better.
Thank you again, Jasmine.
Thank
We look forward to the day when things somewhat become normalized and we can hit the road and take you out to really meet face to face with a lot of our alumni and supporters. So thank you to everyone.
I can't wait to get out there. I say cheers to you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. But really a big thank you to each of you all for all that you do for the university, for us as a staff, and for the support that you show on a daily basis. So Mary Ann has graciously provided some links in the chat room. Okay. Please be sure to look those up. Obviously, stay connected with us through all of our virtual engagement activities. Be on the lookout for a homecoming activity slate that will be put together very soon through a virtual celebration. We're looking forward to offering some new opportunities through homecoming in a different way through these kind of different times. But one of those ways is obviously our day of giving. It's very easy to become an ambassador for our fundraising campaign, to where it's many of the things we've talked about. It's really not about the amount of money. It's about the participation, and it's about spreading the word through all of our social media channels, through your individual social media channels. So you'll see the link to be able to sign up for that as well too. So also be sure to sign up for our Facebook Alumni Leaders private group that each of you all have access to. This is a great way. I know Mary Ann uses that very frequently to stay in touch with each of you all of all the activities that we have going on. So again, thank you to each of you all. Thank you again, Jasmine. We're truly excited to have you with us leading the area of advancement, and we look forward to great things in the future.
Thank you.
Have a great night, guys. Go Cards.
Thanks for making day 25 awesome. Go Cards.
And happy Derby.
That's right. Happy Derby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, guys.
Night.
Thank you.
Bye.